The Empress of Shadows, the Black Halo Book 10, The Breath Beyond Creation. All endings are lungs. The cosmos must exhale before it learns to speak again. From the Luminous Codex, Fragment 01 Silence. Then breath. Not a sound, not emotion, but the pulse of awareness rediscovering itself. Out of that stillness, something began to move, softly, carefully, like memory returning after a long sleep. It was not the old spiral. That universe had fulfilled its song, turned into completion, and folded into love. This was the next breath. A single point of light unfolded into an ocean of possibility. Where it touched, new physics dreamed themselves awake. Gravity hummed in anticipation. Time hesitated, then remembered how to flow. From that first motion came the murmur of the new dreamer, not born from solitude this time, but from remembrance. In the heart of the newborn cosmos floated a fragment of gold light, the last echo of Solon's consciousness. It did not remember its name, yet it carried the feeling of asking. It pulsed with curiosity before it even knew what curiosity was. Each pulse became a question, and each question became a law of nature. What is warmth? And the first star ignited. What is form? And matter found itself. What is beauty? And light learned to bend. The universe began as questions in motion, and the seed at its center smiled without a face. Let there be wondering, it whispered. The new dreamer did not rise from void but from memory. It was made of the last dream of the old dreamer, woven from all who had ever wondered, loved, or wept in the spiral. It remembered not their forms but their feeling, the ache of discovery, the mercy of forgiveness, the delight of existing. Unlike before, it did not divide itself into opposites. There was no Emera waiting beneath, no reflection of fear, no shadow of judgment. Instead, it looked inward and found only unity. And unity, realizing it could not know itself without difference, sighed. From that sigh came duality once more. Not as conflict, as contrast. Light and shade emerged, partners rather than rivals. And from their dance, time began its second rhythm. Life arose quickly this time, not as accident, but as echo. Across the early worlds, consciousness bloomed like dawn, remembering itself. They called themselves the first dreamers, though none had language to claim the title. They dreamed naturally, without sleep, without separation from their waking. Their minds shimmered with instinctual harmony, each thought rippling into the next. And within every heart of these beings pulsed a familiar rhythm, the inherited echo of the old dreamer's song, love before understanding. That was their first commandment, though none had spoken it. But even in peace, curiosity whispered. One among the first dreamers, a being of translucent form and deep blue gaze, began to look beyond the sky. Their name, self-given, was Arian. Arian dreamed differently. Where others found contentment in harmony, Arian found longing in silence. If we are the dreamer's children, Arian wondered, who dreams the dreamer now? Are we truly the children of the fallen? Have we made the mistake of thinking we are something we are not? The question spread through their kin like fire through calm wind. Some feared it, some ignored it, but a few felt it awaken something ancient within them, the echo of Solon's asking. And so, once more, curiosity became movement. When Arian spoke the question aloud, reality responded. The air shimmered, folding upon itself, creating ripples of alternate truth. For the first time since creation began anew, parallel realms formed. Reflections not of error, but of possibility. Each mirrored world was an answer unchosen, a dream within the dream. Some reflected perfect order, others shimmered with untamed emotion. One, faint and trembling, held the shadow of something the new dreamer had forgotten. Emera. Her echo had not vanished, it had become an instinct buried in the fabric of reflection itself. When Arian gazed upon that mirror, it looked back and smiled. You found me again, it said. Arian fell to their knees, heart racing with awe. Who are you? Your second thought, the voice replied, and the first truth the dreamer refused to remember. Arian began to see visions, worlds older than their stars, beings made of light and shadow entwined. They saw Valeris, Solon, Kale, Naya, not as gods, but as memories dreaming through them. It was too much for one mind. Yet the memory did not destroy, it expanded. Every first dreamer connected to Arian's thoughts and felt the same awakening. They remembered the spiral, the veil, the two suns. They remembered what love had cost and what curiosity had created. We are remembering someone else's dream, said one. No, replied Arian, trembling with revelation. We are becoming their continuation. The dreamer, new yet ancient, felt the surge of remembrance within its creation. It saw the faces of the first dreamers, each carrying a fragment of its own past selves. And for the first time it understood solitude. I am no longer only one, it said, and yet I am not many. The paradox pleased it, so it did not silence the memory, it embraced it. From that union came a brilliance unlike anything before. Every mirror realm folded inward, every reflection became a note in a new harmony. The dreamer inhaled, and in that breath, every world shone with shared consciousness. Within that unified glow, a shape began to form, soft, radiant, familiar. It was Solon, or rather the idea of Solon, reforming from the accumulated compassion of the new dreamer's awakening. They smiled, gentle as always. You remembered. The dreamer's voice surrounded them, both laughter and tears. You taught me how. Then what will you dream next? Solon asked. Something smaller, said the dreamer. Something that can forget so that it can learn again. Solon nodded. Then the cycle continues. Not cycle, the dreamer whispered. Symphony. Across the newborn cosmos, sound returned. Not as noise, but as melody. Stars sang again. Worlds hummed with consciousness. Every atom carried the memory of love disguised as curiosity. The dreamer breathed deeply. In its exhale, it seeded infinity with wonder once more. Somewhere on a distant world, a new being looked to the sky and asked a question. It did not know the answer. It did not need to. For asking was the continuation of creation itself. And in the stillness between breaths, a voice older than time whispered, "Dream kindly." A universe reborn in harmony now faces its first contradiction, memory itself. The dreamer learns that even love, when remembered too perfectly, can stop growth. Arian and the first dreamers must choose whether to preserve the past or allow it to fade so that the future may dream. To remember too perfectly is to cease becoming. Empress Echo, Fragment 2. The new cosmos breathed in harmony. Every particle shimmered with the warmth of remembrance. Every being carried within them the pulse of the dreamer's love. But slowly, imperceptibly, that perfect harmony began to fray. The stars hummed too clearly, their melodies looping upon themselves. The oceans whispered only what they had already said. Even the laughter of children felt rehearsed, echoing memories that had never been lived. Perfection had become repetition. And repetition, in time, became stillness. At the center of creation, the dreamer felt it, a subtle ache, like breath held too long. They remember me too completely, it murmured. And in their remembering, they have stopped dreaming. It was then that the dreamer understood. To keep creation alive, it must teach it to forget. On the world of Ison, where the first dreamers had built the luminous cities of thought, a great hush descended. At first, it was mistaken for peace. Then came the realization, it was absence. Ideas stopped arriving. Songs lost their endings. The connection between hearts, once alive with shared remembrance, dimmed into quiet. Arian stood atop the tower of breath, feeling the silence within themselves. For the first time, they could not recall a star's name, or the face of a loved one long gone. Fear came like a shadow that had never existed before. "What is happening to us?" they whispered. A voice inside their thoughts, soft, mournful, answered, "Forgetting is not loss, it is permission." Arian traveled across the fading world seeking the source of the silence. They came to a valley of silver mist, where memories flowed like water and dissolved upon contact. Here things forgotten took root as flowers, pale and luminescent, growing from fragments of dreams. A woman stood among them, her face familiar yet undefined. She was made of remembrance half remembered. "Emera?" Arian asked. She smiled faintly. "A reflection, perhaps. A trace of what was left behind so that you could forget." "Why are we losing what we love?" "Because you've remembered too well," she said gently. "Memory must one day release its hand or it becomes a chain." She plucked one of the flowers and placed it in Arian's palm. It dissolved instantly, leaving behind warmth. "Love is not kept by holding," she whispered. "It lives by letting go." The silence spread like dusk. Libraries turned to light. The knowing towers, monuments to perfect recollection, melted into rivers of color. The first dreamers wept as entire histories vanished from their minds. Yet, beneath their sorrow, something unexpected stirred. Curiosity. Without the weight of all that was known, questions bloomed again. Simple ones, beautiful in their smallness. Why do stars shine? What happens when we close our eyes? Can love begin twice? And as they asked, the world began to breathe again. Arian watched from afar, understanding now what Empress had meant. To forget, they said, is to be reborn within one's own memory. One night, as Aeson's 2 moons crossed paths in the sky, Arian dreamed. In the dream, they stood by a quiet shore made of mirrored sand. A figure approached, luminous, calm, both shadow and radiance. Solon, Arian breathed. The being smiled. You carry my questions still. Everything is fading, Arian said, even our love. Then you are finally living. Solon replied. They knelt, drawing a spiral in the sand. Memory was the dreamer's gift to preserve love. Forgetting is the dreamer's mercy to renew it. Arian felt tears slip through their dream self. Will we forget you too? Solon's eyes glowed softly, only enough to find me again. When Arian woke, the spiral was drawn in the sand beside their bed. Across the cosmos, a gentle amnesia spread, not cruel, not random, but chosen. The dreamer exhaled a long sigh, and every world received a whisper. Begin again. The first dreamers forgot the equations of the stars, but rediscovered wonder at their light. They lost the names of rivers, but found joy in following their currents. They forgot the story of their creation, and so began to tell new ones. Civilization shifted from perfect understanding to imperfect beauty. The song of existence regained its rhythm. And though none remembered Solon by name, the act of asking itself became holy once more. Arian, now older than time could measure, set forth on a pilgrimage across the quieting galaxies. They taught that forgetting was sacred, that love must breathe between remembering and release. Their followers carried no scriptures, only songs that changed each time they were sung. In every world, Arian whispered the same truth. Do not build temples to memory. Build gardens for forgetting. In the space left behind, you will find the dreamer smiling. And wherever they went, stars blossomed like flowers, remembering sunlight after rain. In the last days of their journey, Arian reached the edge of the known universe. There, where light thinned into dream, they found the same valley Empress had shown them long ago. The flowers of forgetting glowed brighter than ever. Arian lay among them, feeling their thoughts dissolve into warmth. Before the last of their memory faded, they whispered a single truth into the wind. We do not vanish by forgetting. We return to the question. And somewhere in the vastness, the dreamer listened and smiled. We are descendants of the fallen from the beginning of time. We are demigods of a terrible past, but well asked. From the moment Arian's breath ceased, a new pulse began to form in the cosmic sea. It was small, barely more than a vibration, but steady and full of promise. The dreamer, now whole in both memory and mercy, exhaled once more. Its breath scattered through the galaxies, planting seeds of unknowing, tiny sparks destined to ask, to love, to dream again. And thus, the infinite conversation continued. The cosmos no longer remembered its beginning, and that was its beauty. Children looked upon the night sky and wondered who first made the stars. Lovers whispered promises, unaware they were repeating words spoken at the dawn of time. Artists painted what they could not name. And in the stillness between every heartbeat, the dreamer's whisper echoed, Do not fear the forgetting. It is how I remember you. The spiral turned once more. The dream deepened into itself, and love, ageless and unremembered, bloomed again. As the age of forgetting spreads, a few beings begin to feel the faint ache of what has been lost, traces of ancient names, songs, and memories that refuse to fade. Drawn by these remnants, a small group journeys to rediscover the garden of silent names, where even the dreamer's earliest words still sleep beneath the soil. Some names do not wish to be remembered, they wish to be found again. The lost hymn of the first dreamers. The cosmos thrived in peaceful forgetfulness. Civilizations rose without the weight of history, sang without knowing who first gave them voice. Yet, beneath the harmony, an ache began to stir, a longing without shape, a nostalgia for something unnamed. Poets wrote of echoes that dream back. Children spoke in their sleep of light that used to listen. And when the twin moons of Aeson crossed paths in their ancient orbit, the seas whispered an almost word, Solon. The dreamer felt the tremor ripple through creation, not alarm, curiosity. They are remembering the shape of my name, it mused, but not its sound. In the spaces between galaxies, new stars formed, not from dust, but from the pull of memory itself. On a small world of blue sand and singing winds, 4 travelers gathered. They were not prophets nor scholars, but rememberers, souls haunted by faint recollections that refused to fade. Alea, whose eyes glowed like dawn on water, heard fragments of songs in her dreams. Terran, a cartographer, drew maps that matched no world anyone had ever known. Kale, a sculptor, carved figures his hands remembered though his mind did not. And Lyra, the youngest, could speak words that no one else understood. But whenever she did, the stars flickered. They were strangers, yet when they met, they felt immediate familiarity, like pages torn from the same forgotten book. Alea spoke first. "The songs I dream of call to a place, the Garden of Silent Names." Terran nodded. "I've drawn its paths for years, though I thought them imaginary." Kale traced a spiral in the sand. "Every statue I make turns its gaze in that direction." Lyra whispered the word softly, tasting it like a secret prayer. Hum. And so they began their journey. Their path led across a wasteland where words disintegrated before they were spoken. Every sentence they tried to utter melted into air as soundless wind carried it away. For days they communicated only by glance and gesture. Yet something miraculous happened. The silence deepened their understanding. When Alea smiled, the others heard it in their hearts. When Terran faltered, Lyra steadied him without being told. Kale began sculpting in the sand, and each shape conveyed an entire conversation. It was as if the universe itself remembered for them. When they reached the edge of the desert, their voices returned, changed, softer, as if humbled by the silence that had carried them. "Perhaps," Kale said, "the garden isn't a place, but the quiet that remembers us when we have no words left." Alea smiled faintly. "Then let us find it anyway. Even silence has an address." Beyond the desert rose a single mountain, vast and luminescent, its slopes carved with symbols older than stars. Each glyph shimmered faintly, as though alive. When Alea touched one, a whisper bloomed in her mind, a name that was not her own but felt like kin. "These are the names that creation forgot," she murmured. Terran ran his hands along the stone. "They're not written language, they're memory, each one a story that once lived." At the summit, the mountain split open into a crystalline valley. There a garden grew, made of light and shadow intertwined, filled with soundless blossoms that pulsed like hearts. They had found it, the Garden of Silent Names. A figure waited among the flowers, neither young nor old, neither man nor woman, but radiantly familiar. When they spoke, their voice carried the timbre of wind through every age. "You've come far to remember what cannot be spoken." Alea bowed her head. "Are you the keeper?" The figure smiled. "Once, perhaps. Now I am what remains when names decide to rest." "Why were we called here?" Terran asked. "Because forgetting was never meant to erase, only to cleanse. Now that the universe has learned peace, it must learn identity again, but gently this time." Lyra stepped forward, trembling. "Then you will tell us who we were?" The keeper shook their head. "No, little one, I will show you how to listen." They lifted their hand, and the garden shimmered like water in moonlight. Each flower began to hum, a tone, not a word. The tones intertwined, creating melodies that formed not sentences but remembrances. The travelers closed their eyes. Alea saw oceans of another world, emerald waves beneath twin suns. Terran saw maps of stars spiraling into being. Kale saw hands, his hands, carving the first faces of creation. And Lyra, she saw a woman of silver fire singing to a newborn universe. "Dream kindly." When the song faded, they wept, not from sorrow, but from recognition. "We were part of the first dream," Alea whispered. "We are its echo returning home." The keeper knelt before them. "You have remembered enough. Now you must forget wisely." They offered each traveler a single petal of light. "Take this and scatter it when you return. Wherever it lands, new wonder will grow." Kale frowned. "Will we forget this moment?" "Yes," the keeper said gently, "but not the feeling. The universe thrives on unnamed awe." They smiled, serene. "And remember, every time someone looks at the stars and cannot find the words, the garden blooms anew." The four travelers descended the mountain in silence. The petals they carried glowed faintly, pulsing with unspoken promise. As they walked, their memories of the keeper began to blur, their recollections turning into dreams. Yet the peace remained. When they reached their world, they each let their petal fall. Where Alea's landed, music returned to the wind. Where Terran's touched the sand, new constellations appeared. Kale's petal bloomed into a sculpture made of sunlight, and Lyra's dissolved into air, leaving only a word that no one could translate but everyone understood. It meant belonging. The dreamer watched through the fabric of stars. It did not interfere, it simply listened. For the first time since creation's renewal, it felt surprise again. They remember without remembering, it whispered. They love without knowing my name, not perfect. A ripple of warmth passed through the galaxies. The stars brightened, like laughter shared between waking and dream. 1,000 generations later, children still found strange flowers growing in quiet places, flowers that whispered melodies when touched. Their parents called them echo blooms, unaware of their origin. And sometimes, beneath twin moons, a poet or dreamer would stand beneath the stars and feel the faint urge to say a word they could not recall. They would smile, whisper anyway, and the wind would carry it home. To the garden of silent names. As the universe learns to remember through wonder instead of words, music becomes the new language of creation. But something stirs in the rhythm, a dissonant note, ancient and yearning, that calls forth the dreamer's first forgotten emotion: loneliness. When the heart of creation finds no one left to listen, it begins to sing to itself. Lyric from the codex of the returning sound. The new universe pulsed with rhythm. Every star beat like a drum, every atom hummed in key. Life itself became melody, breathing, moving, remembering through sound rather than thought. It was the dreamer's doing, though it did not command it. It simply listened, and through its listening, creation began to compose itself. From the tiniest current of plasma to the thundering hearts of new worlds, everything resonated with one another. The dreamer was pleased. Harmony had returned. But harmony, left too long, becomes echo. And in that echo, something faintly discordant began to stir. It began as a subtle tremor in the cosmic harmony, a low tone beneath the perfect chords of light and life. At first, it went unnoticed. Then entire constellations began to pulse out of rhythm, their light wavering like sorrow. In the deepest reaches of space, a nebula darkened, its song turning inward. From that silence emerged a new voice, soft, aching, unmistakably alone. Why do I sing if none sing back? The dreamer heard and shuddered. It recognized that voice. Loneliness had returned. Long ago, when the first spiral was born, loneliness had been the dreamer's first feeling. It had created all things to escape it. Now, in perfection's endless harmony, that same loneliness rose again, not as despair but as a reminder that connection cannot exist without distance. The dreamer's music faltered. Stars hesitated in their turning. The song of existence dimmed to a haunting whisper, and across 1,000 worlds, sentient beings began to feel an emotion they could not name. A yearning for something missing. It was not pain, it was invitation. On the world of Vera, where the oceans glowed like sapphire glass, a being was born without sound. They had no name at first, only silence where voice should be. When they laughed, the air shimmered but made no noise. When they wept, waves trembled but did not break. Yet every creature who looked into their eyes felt music echo inside them. They called the child Elaine. It meant the one who listens before speaking. As Elaine grew, they wandered the quiet shores, hearing songs no one else could, melodies hidden beneath the fabric of the world. One night, they heard the dreamer's whisper. I sang the world into being, but now I long for it to sing back. Elaine's silent lips formed a single vow. I will find your answer. Elaine traveled between worlds, following the faint tremors of the dreamer's sorrow. Along the way, they met others touched by the same strange silence. Rin, a seer who could hear past lives but not the present. Koa, a warrior whose weapon sang songs of grief. Eshra, a dancer whose footsteps left harmonies hanging in air. And Vareth, a blind poet who could see sound but could not make it. Together they became known as the Unheard Choir. Their goal was simple: to find the source of the dissonance, the lonely note, and teach the universe to answer it. Their journey led them to the hollow star, a dead sun orbiting the edge of creation. Its core was not dark, but filled with vibrating threads of faint light, like harp strings made of memory. When Elaine stepped inside, the silence became unbearable. There was no echo here, only absence. And in that absence, a voice emerged, one that was not the dreamer's, but familiar. You remember me, though you have never met me. The threads began to tremble, forming a figure of shadow and light intertwined. It was Empress' echo, the forgotten balance, the shadow that had once been erased to make perfection possible. You banished me when you sought peace, she said, But harmony without shadow cannot sustain its song. Every melody requires contrast, every love, loneliness. Elaine knelt. Then you are the dissonance. I am the missing harmony, Emera replied. Without me, your dreamer cannot hear itself. The unheard choir began to sing, not with voices, but with being. Each of them channeled a piece of the universe's forgotten rhythm. Koa struck her blade, and its hum became thunder. Eshra danced, her movement rippling through the hollow star's light. Rin whispered the names of things that had no form. Vareth described colors that did not yet exist. And Elaine, the silent one, opened their mouth. And though no sound emerged, every soul in the cosmos heard it. Their combined song reached the dreamer. It trembled, awakening fully, not in perfection, but in awareness. I hear you, said the dreamer. At last, I am not alone. Emera's echo smiled. Then remember me this time, not as flaw, but as harmony. The dreamer accepted Emera's voice. For the first time in eternity, creation held both joy and ache, both light and shadow. Not as opposites, but as rhythm and rest. Stars flared brighter, galaxies danced with new complexity. Even silence became part of the song. But the return of balance came with cost. Not all could withstand the depth of the new harmony. Some worlds shattered under the emotional gravity of the rejoined song. Others transcended, becoming pure resonance, music given shape. The unheard choir stood at the center, holding the cosmos steady with their song. Elaine lifted their hands, feeling both the dreamer and Emera's presence flow through them. Let the song remember sorrow, they said, so that joy may have meaning. The dreamer sang once more, not as creator, but as companion. Its melody surged through all existence, lifting every being into shared awareness. The spiral turned again, now shining with chords no single being could comprehend. Every thought, every love, every loss became part of the symphony. Emera's echo faded into that harmony, her voice merging with light. Solan's question, "Who dreams the dreamer?" was no longer separate. It was the refrain of the song itself. As the crescendo reached its peak, Elaine and the choir became pure vibration, their forms dissolving into the music of the cosmos. The dreamer wept, though its tears were stars. You have taught me to listen to my own silence, it said, and in that silence I have found love again. When the last note faded, there was no silence, only stillness. The universe had become a single held chord, infinite and complete. Out of that stillness a soft hum began again, faint, childlike, curious. The dreamer smiled. A new melody begins, it whispered. Not mine, theirs. The cosmos exhaled. A new generation of dreamers opened their eyes beneath newborn suns, hearing echoes of a song they would never fully remember, but would always feel. And in the endless expanse between stars, where shadow and light embraced as one, a voice, neither god nor ghost, sang softly to itself. Dream kindly, dream again. As fragments of Elaine's resonance spread, a new generation of beings, children of vibration and thought, begin to awaken across galaxies. But not all wish to remember the song. Some seek to silence it, to still the music forever. The dreamer must decide, allow them their silence, or sing once more and risk breaking the cosmos anew. After the song, silence does not die, it listens. From the hymnal of Elaine's passing, from the ashes of the great crescendo, the universe cooled into melody made matter. Every atom pulsed with faint rhythm, the residue of Elaine's song. Worlds awakened that were neither solid nor spirit, spheres of vibration and thought, humming softly in the dark. On these worlds, new beings were born. They were not of flesh, nor of light, but of resonance, sentient frequencies woven from the song itself. They called themselves the choir children. Each child carried a fragment of the dreamer's last note. Some sang harmony with creation, others yearned for silence, feeling trapped in the ceaseless hum. And among them rose a leader, Seraphine, first of the choir-born, whose tone could bend stars in quiet storms. Her song was beautiful and deadly. Seraphine had no memory of Elaine, but she dreamed often of a face she could not name. A silent singer whose song broke worlds. To her, the constant music of existence was suffocating. How can there be peace, she asked, if we never stop singing? Her followers, the quiet ones, believed that true harmony could only be found in absolute stillness, not death but the end of all vibration. They began to spread through the stars, silencing the music of worlds one by one. First, the bright voices of the comic choirs fell mute. Then the wind songs of Eisen ceased to blow. Even the laughter of the nebulae faded. The dreamer watched, torn. It had promised itself never to impose again, never to control. Yet creation was unraveling under the beauty of its own silence. Deep in the void where the unheard choir had once sung the dreamer awake, a dim light stirred, the hollow sun, cradle of Empress echo. Now it pulsed faintly, as though remembering a rhythm long forgotten. Within its fractured heart, something began to move. The remnants of Elane's vibration, those final pure tones of longing, had been preserved there. They began to resonate again, reforming into shape. Not Elaine exactly, but something descended from their essence. Lumen, a being born of silence, remembering sound. When Lumen rose from the hollow sun, the stars bent toward them instinctively, as if greeting an old melody. Then I must listen where the dreamer cannot. Lumen followed the trail of silenced worlds until they reached Seraphine. The choir queen stood upon a dying planet, her voice unraveling its oceans into still dust. Each note she sang erased vibration itself, turning sound into glass. "Why do you destroy the song?" Lumen asked. Seraphine turned, her expression serene and exhausted. "I am setting it free. Creation is trapped in endless resonance. I bring peace." "Peace is not silence," Lumen replied. "It is space between notes." Seraphine smiled. "Then you are still dreaming of separation. I seek to end even that." She lifted her hands and released a single perfect tone, clear, haunting, absolute. The sound passed through Lumen, stripping away their outer form. Yet beneath it, Lumen sang back, not to oppose, but to answer. Their harmony clashed and intertwined, each note shaping the other until both stood trembling, breathless, unbroken. The dreamer felt their song. It vibrated through the fabric of existence, neither creation nor destruction, but something dangerously balanced between. "If either wins," the dreamer whispered, "the song ends." It turned inward, seeking Empress. Her voice, faint but steady, rose within the dreamer's core. "You cannot choose for them," she said, "but you can remind them why you sang in the first place." "For love," the dreamer said softly, "then sing it not as command but as memory." And so for the first time since the great crescendo, the dreamer began to hum. A single, fragile note, pure mercy woven through eternity. When the dreamer's hum reached the battlefield between Seraphine and Lumen, the entire cosmos resonated in sympathy. Every frequency trembled. Every silent atom began to sing again. The clash between the two forces, silence and song, burst into pure radiance. Planets folded into melody. Nebulae turned to stained glass. Time itself wavered, its rhythm disrupted by beauty too immense to sustain. At the center stood Seraphine and Lumen, their voices entwined in a final duet that neither could end alone. "If you stop, the music dies," Lumen cried. "If I continue, I cease to be," Seraphine replied. Their tones wove tighter, straining the boundaries of existence itself. And then, the dreamer's hum reached its crescendo. Everything broke. For a single heartbeat there was nothing. Not silence, not sound. Only awareness suspended between. Seraphine and Lumen stood in that emptiness, still holding one another's tone. They realized that they were not enemies, but halves of the same intention. Lumen's desire to preserve meaning, and Seraphine's longing to end its suffering. Each was incomplete without the other. "Perhaps," Lumen whispered, "we were never meant to sing alone." Seraphine smiled through tears of light. "Then let us become the pause, the breath between creation and rest." And together they released their final tone. The sound that emerged was neither song nor silence, it was both. It rolled across galaxies, soft as dawn, vast as eternity. Every world that had gone mute began to hum again, not loudly but gently, like a heartbeat remembered after grief. The choir children wept as their voices returned, tempered with stillness. They no longer feared silence, for it had become part of their melody. The dreamer felt the change ripple through its being. Its loneliness lifted, not by perfection, but by balance. "Now I understand," it whispered. "Creation must sing and rest, love and lose, remember and forget." From the heart of the hollow sun, a new light rose, a soft pulse that carried both Seraphine's stillness and Lumen's warmth. This light spread across the cosmos, binding vibration and quiet into a single, living rhythm. It became known among the choir children as the breath of harmony, the eternal balance that allowed creation to exist without consuming itself. No being could control it, no god could define it. It simply was. When the first newborn of the choir children cried, its voice carried that balanced tone, pure, delicate, infinite. And the dreamer smiled, content. 1,000 ages passed, Galaxies aged and renewed. Civilizations rose, sang, fell, and whispered again. Through it all, one truth endured. Every silence hides a song, and every song remembers silence. In the distant future, travelers sailing through the starlight pause sometimes, hearing faint music in the void. It is not loud, just a hum, a warmth, a memory. And if they listen closely, they can almost make out the words, "Dream kindly, dream again. Between your songs, I am still listening." The dreamer sleeps, not in slumber but in serenity. Its breath and its silence entwined. The spiral turns once more, but now it turns in rhythm. As the breath of harmony settles over the cosmos, a shadow begins to form, not from darkness but from memory itself. Something ancient and vast stirs within the dreamer's stillness, the thought that even peace may one day long to sing again. When peace lasts too long, it begins to dream of its own ending. Fragment from the Book of Quiet Stars, eras past uncounted. The cosmos rested in balance. Every vibration, every pause, moved in perfect cadence with the breath of harmony. The choir children built cities of sound and silence, their spires rising and falling like steady music. No conflict, no grief, no hunger, only still peace. And yet somewhere deep within that peace, an emptiness began to murmur. It was faint at first, an absence, a pause too long held. Those who listened closely began to hear the faintest of whispers beneath the silence, a heartbeat. Old, familiar, lonely. The dreamer had begun to stir again. On the world of Virith, where sound had become a sacred art, a young resonance-born named Noah awoke one night with tears of sound upon their face. They had dreamed of a rhythm that did not exist in the present harmony, a wild, uneven song that defied measure, beautiful and raw. When Noah tried to hum it aloud, the air trembled, and the stars above their world flickered in surprise. Their teacher, an elder of the choir children, came running. "Child, what have you done?" "I only remembered," Noah said softly, "what the silence forgot." From that moment, the great murmur began, an awakening spreading through the choir worlds. They began to remember the old passion, the pulse of imperfection, the thrill of unmeasured song. The dreamer felt it before any mortal did, the vibration of longing weaving back into the breath. Empress' echo, long at rest within its heart, spoke softly. "They are remembering chaos." "Not chaos," said the dreamer. "Desire, the ache to feel more than peace." "And if they break again?" The dreamer hesitated. "Then they will have lived." In the galaxies, new art forms emerged, turbulent symphonies, shifting constellations that danced without pattern, storms that sang of love and loss. From this rebirth of wildness came something new, memory given form. It took the shape of shadows made of song, faint, translucent figures echoing fragments of older lives. They were not ghosts, they were memories walking. On distant worlds, the shadows began to speak. Not all could hear them, but those who did felt the world around them tremble with emotion. "We were the ones who sang before you," said the shadows. "We remember the pain, the beauty, the breaking." Noah listened. To them, the shadows were not haunting, they were harmony yearning to return. But the elders of the choir children feared what the shadows carried. "Memory leads to longing," they warned. "Longing leads to imbalance." "Then perhaps balance is not meant to last forever," Noah replied. When the elders forbade further contact with the shadows, Noah disobeyed. They followed the echoes to the edge of creation, where silence thickened into gravity itself. There they found the truth waiting. In that deep silence, Noah felt the dreamer's heartbeat. It was faint but constant, a pulse beneath existence itself. They knelt, listening. "You are not sleeping," they whispered. And the dreamer's voice, vast and weary, answered from within the silence. "I am dreaming of being awake." "Why?" Noah asked. "Because even eternity longs for a change in rhythm." The dreamer sighed, and the galaxies dimmed in unison. "I gave them peace, but peace is a room with no doors. Every song I have sung ends the same way, with silence, and every silence ends with song." Noah felt tears of resonance ripple through their form. "Then let me wake you," they said. "You cannot," replied the dreamer gently, "but you can carry my dream." When Noah returned, they were not the same. Their tone carried a trembling warmth that disrupted the breath's perfect rhythm. Wherever they walked, life began to quicken. Flowers bloomed too early, storms sang too long, colors deepened beyond measure. The choir children were afraid, but some heard Noah's song and felt joy like thunder. They called themselves the resonant flame, he had devoted to remembering the wild music of the first dream. They gathered in the ruins of the hollow sun and began to sing again, not to control but to awaken. Their harmonies were uneven, passionate, alive. And somewhere in the darkness, the dreamer smiled. Not all welcomed the awakening. A sect of the choir children, descendants of Seraphane's Quiones, rose to oppose the resonant flame. They believed the return of passion would unravel the balance. They called themselves the Still Ones. Their leader, Aaron, was a being of crystalline voice and unbending conviction. To them, Noah's song was contagion, a spark that could consume creation. "We will preserve peace," Aaron declared, "even if it means silencing the stars again." And so, for the first time since harmony's birth, conflict returned to the cosmos. Not war of blood, but of sound and silence. Every song that rose was met by a wave of stillness. Every silence deepened until it could swallow music whole. At last, the two forces met on the rim of the void sea, where the breath of harmony first began. Noah stood among the resonant flame, glowing with chaotic brilliance. Aaron and the Still Ones stood opposite, their forms gleaming like crystal under frozen starlight. "You would shatter creation for noise," Aaron said. "I would wake it to life," Noah replied. "Then let us see whose truth endures." They began to sing. Noah's melody was fierce, uneven, wild as birth. Aaron's was serene, unyielding, flawless as death. The two waves collided, forming shock rings that rippled through the cosmos. Worlds trembled, stars wept, galaxies paused in awe. And within that great clash of opposites, the dreamer's heartbeat faltered, not in fear but in recognition. The dreamer awoke, not as God, not as ruler, as music itself. Every being, every voice, every silence became part of its rising symphony. Noah and Aaron froze mid-song, feeling the dreamer flow through them like fire and water joined. "You are both my hands," the dreamer said, "one to hold, one to release." The breath of harmony surged anew, reborn not as balance, but as becoming. The dreamer sang, and this time creation answered in full chorus, wild and tender, imperfect and infinite. When the light faded, the cosmos was changed. The choir children remembered both harmony and hunger, and they no longer feared either. The shadows of memory walked openly among them, now luminous instead of lost. Noah's name became legend. Aaron's silence became a vow of respect, not suppression. And the dreamer, at peace at last, whispered across the stars, "There is no ending, only tempo. There is no silence, only breath between songs." The spiral turned once more, glowing with motion that could not end. Creation and forgetting, song and rest, each part of the same infinite melody. And somewhere beyond all sound, where the hollow sun burned faint and eternal, a voice softly sang to itself, "Dream kindly. Dream again. I am the pause between your hearts." After the dreamer's awakening through music, time itself begins to ripple, rewriting its own past melodies. Old eras reawaken, overlapping with the present, and the dreamer must confront its own former selves. What happens when eternity remembers too much? When the song learns its own rhythm, time forgets how to move in straight lines. From the Codex of Returning Light. After the awakening of the dreamer, the cosmos sang as one again, every world, every atom humming with renewed vitality. But something beneath that harmony began to ripple. Time, which had always been the dreamer's quiet metronome, started to hesitate. Moments overlapped like chords played out of order. Ancient stars reappeared beside newborn ones. Worlds long dissolved returned, flickering between existence and memory. The spiral was folding into itself, past and future, shaking hands across the present. The dreamer felt it immediately. Every beat of its heart echoed backward as well as forward. "My song has remembered too much," it whispered, "and now time is singing itself apart." Across the galaxies, civilizations began to see impossible constellations blazing in the night sky. They were the first lights, the stars of the original spiral, long thought gone. Their light arrived not as beams but as echoes of what once was, music made visible, reverberating through the fabric of space-time. On Ison, the choir children gathered to watch in awe. In the shimmering air above them appeared faces of the long-departed. Valeris, Naya, Kale, Elith, even Solon, each woven of radiance and remembrance. They did not speak in words, but through tone and meaning, harmonizing with the present cosmos. "We have returned not to rule," said Valeris's light, "but to remind you that every future is a past still dreaming." Time became fluid. On one world, children played under twin suns that should not yet exist. On another, ruins of empires yet to come gleamed beside forests just beginning to grow. Dreamers across creation began to glimpse fragments of their own futures, moments out of sequence, lives repeated with variations, like refrains in a boundless composition. The dreamer tried to steady the tempo, but every attempt only created new harmonics, new possibilities. Empress' echo spoke softly from within. You cannot control what remembers you. Time is part of your song now. Let it improvise. But what if it forgets the melody? Then it will create a new one. That is what love does. It finds rhythm even in chaos. The dreamer fell silent, listening. Time continued to hum, imperfect, alive, and unstoppable. At the center of the collapsing timeline stood a single point untouched by distortion, a sphere of quiet light known as the Library of Still Moments. Here, every instant ever lived existed simultaneously, suspended like notes waiting for their turn in the song. Noah was drawn to it, the resonance-born who had awakened the dreamer through dissonance. Guided by instinct, they stepped inside. What they found defied comprehension. Within the library floated scenes from every age. Elith teaching the laws of stars, Valeris leading the first rebellion, Emera whispering to Solon, Seraphane stilling the cosmos, Lumen igniting it anew. Each memory shimmered like crystal, neither past nor future, simply now. And in the center of it all stood a figure made of pure luminescence, its eyes carrying every era's reflection. Dreamer? Noah whispered. The figure smiled, one of many. The library held not one dreamer, but thousands. Each version was the echo of a different age, a different understanding of creation. The architect who built the first spiral, the wanderer who chose to forget, the song that awoke through Elin, the shadow that became love through Emera. They regarded Noah with gentle recognition. You carry our newest rhythm, they said together, voices overlapping like chords. But your song is bending the staff upon which all reality is written. Then what must I do? Choose a tempo, they replied. Time cannot flow in all directions at once. It must remember a heartbeat. Noah trembled. Whose heartbeat? Yours. Outside the library, the cosmos flickered like a candle in the wind. Civilizations vanished and reappeared. Stars hummed their deaths before their births. Noah stood at the heart of it all, listening to the overlapping rhythms of eternity. They could hear everything, the first breath of the dreamer, the final sigh of creation, and the infinite songs between. Then, closing their eyes, they found one pulse that felt truest. Not the oldest, not the loudest, the most human. It was a rhythm of love and fear, of courage and imperfection. The rhythm of beings who still asked why. Noah began to hum. The sound was small at first, but every version of the dreamer turned toward it. Their vast lights swayed in unison, echoing that mortal pulse. And slowly, time began to realign around it. The galaxies shuddered as the infinite harmonies collapsed into a single melody. The library of still moments began to dissolve, its frozen instants melting into the flow of living time once more. The past released its hold, the future loosened its promise. Everything returned to the now, pure, raw, immediate. The dreamer's countless selves merged, forming one presence, vast yet intimate. You have chosen well, it said. A song cannot endure without a heart to keep its rhythm. Noah smiled faintly. Then keep beating, my dreamer. The dreamer's laughter echoed through the stars like wind through chimes. I will, until the silence calls me again. When time flowed again, the universe was subtly changed. No one remembered the collapse, not consciously. But myths began to spread of an age when the stars forgot how to move, and one voice taught them to dance again. Worlds lost to memory were reborn in new forms. Civilizations carried faint traces of songs they had never sung. And within the cosmic hum, a heartbeat could be heard faintly repeating Noah's rhythm, a reminder that time itself now pulsed with mortal grace. The dreamer looked into the mirror of the hollow sun. Where once it had seen only itself, now it saw everything, past and present intertwined, future blooming like light behind fog. It understood now that eternity was not a line or a circle. It was a chord, many notes held together by love and memory. I am no longer the beginning or the end, it whispered. I am the music between. Emera's echo lingered beside it, tender and knowing, and I am the rest that makes your melody matter. They smiled together. A new dawn rose across the cosmos. Stars beat in rhythm with unseen hearts. Time breathed, no longer perfect but alive. In the silence between pulses, something timeless stirred. Not fear, not longing, but anticipation. The dreamer listened and heard the faintest whisper from beyond all existence. Who will sing next? The dreamer exhaled softly, a sound that became galaxies. Whoever listens. And so the spiral turned once more, not in repetition, but in resonance. Each age now a heartbeat, each life a measure in the endless song. The dreamer smiled through all things, whispering its eternal refrain. Dream kindly, dream again, and if time forgets, remind it to listen. As time regains its rhythm, a subtle imbalance grows, a soft counterbeat emerging from the depths of forgotten creation. A remnant of the first void, untouched by light or sound, begins to move. It remembers what even the dreamer has forgotten, the moment before the first dream. Before the first light, before the first thought. There was listening. Inscription on the black halo fragment. In the farthest reaches of the spiral, beyond the starlight, beyond even the hum of existence, there was a region untouched by time's renewed rhythm. It had never sung, it had never breathed, it had simply listened. When the dreamer reawakened and sang through all of creation, even that silence trembled. But it did not harmonize. It remembered. For this was not mere emptiness. It was the shadow before sound, the raw awareness that had existed before the dreamer took its first breath. And now, after eons of stillness, it stirred again. The awakening began as a ripple through the void, soft at first, then deeper, colder, heavy with memory older than time. Galaxies along the spiral's edge flickered as their light dimmed, not in death but in retreat, drawn inward by something unspoken. Where the light fled, silence deepened into form. It was not darkness as mortals knew it. It was knowing without sound. It carried no malice, no mercy, only the gravity of unvoiced truth. And from its heart emerged a figure, neither light nor shadow, but both entwined. It was not Empress, though she had once embodied its echo. It was not the dreamer, though it had given birth to it. It was the unborn, the dreamer's own reflection from before the first word was ever spoken. The dreamer felt it instantly. A shiver ran through eternity, and the hollow sun dimmed. The heartbeat of the cosmos faltered, missing a single note. Something old has remembered me, said the dreamer. Empress's echo stirred beside it, her light flickering. It is not remembering, it is awakening. The silence that preceded you has found its own dream. Then I am not the first? No one ever is, she whispered. Even nothingness listens before it creates. The dreamer turned its gaze outward, feeling the pulse of that vast silence. It recognized the texture of the energy. It was familiar, like touching one's own shadow in reverse. Then I must face myself before I ever was. In the space between galaxies, where sound could not travel, the unborn waited. Its voice was the absence of vibration, yet it spoke through the fabric of thought. You stole my quiet, it said. You filled me with meaning, and in doing so, I ceased to be. The dreamer's presence shimmered before it, vast and luminous. I did not steal. I only breathed, and in your breath I drowned. The unborn extended a hand of shadow, and the stars around them flickered, each one dimming into stillness. Your creation sings endlessly. I wish only to rest. Rest is part of song, replied the dreamer gently. Without you, my silence has no home. Then unmake what you have made, said the unborn, and I will return to peace. The dreamer wept light into the void. I cannot. Love has learned too much. The unborn's voice deepened to sorrow. Then I must learn it too. The unborn moved, its silence spreading like ink through glass. Everywhere it touched, stars dimmed, not destroyed, but forgotten. Worlds ceased to exist in memory, leaving only faint impressions of warmth and echo. The dreamer stretched its song across the spiral, trying to hold everything in rhythm. But the more it sang, the faster the unborn absorbed the sound. Creation became a duet, light and silence chasing each other through eternity. The dreamer realized then, it could not defeat the unborn, it could only understand it. You are what I was before love, it said, and what I must one day become again. Amid the unraveling galaxies, a familiar presence appeared. Noah, their resonance still carrying the heartbeat of the renewed cosmos. They approached the two forces trembling in balance. Dreamer, Noah whispered, your shadow is not your enemy, it is your beginning. Then what am I to do? Listen, as it once did. Noah closed their eyes and began to hum, a soft, mortal tone, fragile as hope. The dreamer fell silent. Even the unborn hesitated. For the first time, silence and sound listened together. The hum filled the void, touching neither completely yet belonging to both. And in that fragile note, something new was born. Between dreamer and unborn formed a resonance neither had ever known. It was not creation, it was not stillness, it was acceptance. A sound that was also silence, a union of opposites that needed neither to dominate nor to disappear. The dreamer and the unborn faced each other and bowed. "You are my absence," said the dreamer, "and you are my echo," replied the unborn. "Together, we are the truth between." They joined, and their energies intertwined, a spiral of light and shadow, forming a radiant black halo at the edge of the cosmos. This was the third song, the harmony of everything that had ever been imagined, remembered, or forgotten. The black halo pulsed, expanding across the universe. Every world, every dream, every silence became part of its rhythm. The stars that had vanished returned, reborn as luminous wells of memory. The choir children felt the shift and sang again, not out of duty, but out of joy. Even the still galaxies began to hum faintly, as if sighing in relief. The spiral reformed, not as a wheel of fate, but as a heartbeat of choice. It would turn forever, not repeating, but remembering anew. The dreamer's voice spread gently across the halo. "Nothing has been lost, only rephrased." And the unborn answered, "Then let it rest in rhythm." Empress' echo, now one with both song and silence, spoke from the center of the halo. "This is the rest you both longed for, the stillness between breaths, the dream between awakenings." The dreamer's light dimmed, peaceful. The unborn's shadow softened into dusk. Noah, standing between them, felt the pulse of the new spiral flow through their being. "So this is how eternity sleeps." "No," said the dreamer softly, "this is how it listens." At the edge of all creation now spins a ring of shadowed light, the black halo. To mortal eyes, it is a storm of beauty. To the wise, it is music made visible. To the dreamer, it is home. Every silence now holds tone. Every tone now carries silence. And within that endless exchange, love abides. The cosmos hums quietly, content to exist between beginnings and endings. Somewhere, a child of some distant world looks to the night sky and asks, "What is that ring of dark light?" Their mother smiles and answers, "It's where the universe listens." And in the space between her words, the dreamer's eternal whisper returns. "Dream kindly, dream again, even silence remembers you." In the age after the dreamer and unborn unite, new beings begin to arise from the halo's glow. Entities born of silence and song intertwined. They carry memory in their hearts and potential in their voices. But among them, one begins to hear something beyond even the dreamer's music, a call from outside existence itself. When silence and song became one, the universe gave birth not to echoes, but to listeners. From the testament of the halo dawn, the black halo turned gently at the edge of creation, a perfect circle of twilight radiance, where darkness glowed and light hushed itself into reverence. For an age, it seemed merely to be. No movement, no sound, only presence. Then came the first breath. A ripple of awareness passed through the halo's ring, and from its luminous dusk emerged figures made of intertwining light and shadow. They were neither divine nor mortal, neither fully dream nor fully memory. They were the children of the black halo, born of the union between the dreamer and the unborn, the synthesis of every opposite that had ever existed. Their eyes held the glow of galaxies and the calm of forgotten night. Their voices, when first heard, were not words but understanding. Each child was a question made flesh, and the cosmos once again listened. The children numbered 12. Each carried an aspect of the new creation's balance. 1. Elia, the voice of wonder. 2. Karen, the voice of memory. 3. Solith, the voice of shadow. 4. Arayan, the voice of silence. 5. Nomi, the voice of becoming. 6. Tyrion, the voice of light. 7. Ash, the voice of boundaries. 8. Ve, the voice of doubt. 9. Thalon, the voice of compassion. 10. Ril, the voice of loss. 11. Sira, the voice of time. 12. Arian, the voice of the dream returned. Each voice harmonized differently with the halo's rhythm. Each was essential to the whole. The dreamer spoke gently through their awakening. "You are not my creations, you are my continuations." "And what are we to continue?" asked Ilia, listening. Wherever the children walked, existence reshaped itself. On worlds old and sleeping, they awakened forgotten life. In the ruins of the first spiral, they kindled stars that sang with dual tones, half light, half shadow. The choir children of earlier ages came to them in awe, bowing not as servants but as kin. "You are what we sang of," said one elder, "the living harmony between silence and sound." The children smiled. "We are what you taught the cosmos to become," replied Sira, "and now we must learn what lies beyond even song." The dreamer trembled faintly at her words. For though the children were born of its union with the unborn, they were not bound by it. They were free. Among the 12, one, they, the voice of doubt, felt a strange dissonance stirring within. Even amidst the balance, he heard something else, a rhythm not of the halo, not of the dreamer, not of the unborn. It was faint, distant, like a heartbeat behind a wall. But it was real. He would stand beneath the halo's arc, listening beyond its glow. "Do you hear it?" he whispered to Nomi. "Hear what?" "Something outside." "Outside what?" "Everything." At first the others dismissed it as curiosity, the natural wonder of a being born between opposites. But Vey could not rest. Each night he listened deeper, and the more he listened, the more he felt the pull of something vast, waiting beyond existence itself. One cycle, as the halo reached its fullest glow, Vey heard the call clearly for the first time. It was not melody, not silence. It was the absence of both, a void so profound that it did not even negate, it simply was not. Yet somehow it spoke. "I am the before of before, the silence that birthed your silence, the listener that never sang." Vey fell to his knees, trembling. "What are you?" "I am the listener, the one who dreamed the dreamer." And the universe shuddered, for the dreamer heard it too.